All right, we are going to do section 2.2 today, which has a little bit of everything. There are a lot of examples, but they go pretty fast. We'll start with the warm-up from what we did in 2.1. When you see something like this, where you have two signs in a row, remember I'm asking that you rewrite it with a single sign. So the negative 6.5 is going to stay the same. Adding a negative is the same thing as subtracting, so you're just going to write minus 5.6, and then after that you just put it in your calculator and you end up with a negative 12.1. For the second one, there again are two signs in a row, two subtraction signs. So two negatives or two subtraction signs leaves you with a positive, so you're just going to do the 42 plus 14. And then when you do that, you get 56. Again, you can put it in your calculator the original way or your new written way, and it should give you the same answer. But I'm just asking that you rewrite it when you have two signs in a row. For the third one, they tell you that the x is going to be 10, so you're going to plug it in. So you have absolute value, the negative stays there, and then the x they told you is 10. So plus 7, still have your absolute value brackets, and then the minus 5 on the outside. Absolute value brackets are treated like parentheses, so anything in those has to happen first. So negative 10 plus 7 leaves you with a negative 3 inside those absolute value brackets. And then you again still have the minus 5 outside. Now that you have a single number inside the absolute value brackets, you take the absolute value of that number. So the absolute value of negative 3. Remember, that means how far away is negative 3 from 0 on the number line. Well, negative 3 is 3 away. And then, so it comes out as a positive 3, and the minus 5 stays the same. And then you just do 3 minus 5 and get negative 2. And that's it for your warm-up. Hopefully, that's pretty simple. Your calculator does a lot of it, but you just have to rewrite it or understand what that absolute value means. We are going to multiply and divide rational numbers, so a ton of this is just calculator work, just making sure you can do it in your calculator. Then we're going to add some variables in towards the end. So when you multiply or divide two positive numbers, okay, so positive times a positive. This is simple. This is just basic. Positive times a positive gives you positive. That's easy. Okay. When you do two negative numbers, when you multiply or divide two negative numbers, so a negative times a negative, remember two negatives in any situation gives you a positive. Okay? Even when you're talking, right? If I do a double negative, so if I say, I do not like you guys. I do not like you. Two negatives in a row means that I do, right? It's a positive statement. So two negatives give you a positive in all aspects. All right, when you've got one positive and one negative, so a positive times a negative, that is the only time that your answer ends up negative. So one of each leaves you with a negative. Okay? Hopefully you know that, but just a quick review to remember what kinds of numbers we need to be getting, especially if we're relying on our calculators and sometimes we forget something. We need to be able to catch ourselves and be like, that doesn't seem right. So make sure you're paying attention. So products, remember products is multiplication. So negative 6 times 3. A negative times a positive is going to be a negative, and 6 times 3 is 18. That's it. You're more than welcome to use your calculator, but again, just be aware of what kinds of answers you should be getting. So number 2, again, you have one of each, a positive and a negative. So your answer needs to be negative, and then 5 times 8 is just 40. Number 3, you have two positives, so your answer will be positive. So in your calculator, you just do 4.5 times 2.3. It is that simple, and you just get 10.35. Number 4, you've got decimals again, except this time they're both negative. A negative times a negative is going to give you a positive, and when you multiply those two numbers together, you get 90.48. Okay, be careful on number 5. When you're using your calculator, there is a difference between typing in -6 in parentheses squared, which is what the question is saying, and typing in -6 squared without parentheses. There is a difference. The first one, the one that the question is actually asking for, is asking you to take -6 and multiply it times itself, because that's what squaring is. Good. Now, -6 squared, the bottom one, is asking you to square the number 6, just 6, and then make it negative. Okay? So if you do it in your calculator separately, this bottom one, which is not the one we want, is going to give you an answer of -36. Because it does 6 times 6, which is 36, and then it makes it negative. Okay? That's not what you want. Think it through. This is when you need to be smarter than your calculator if you don't use it correctly. This is asking you for -6 times -6. That's what that means. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So anytime you square a number, you should end up with a positive answer, because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is a positive. So anything that's squared ends up being positive. So just make sure when you're using your calculator that you're thinking it through, and make sure you're putting the parentheses where you need them, because they make a big difference. All right. Quotients. You're just dividing. Same concept. One of each gives you a negative. So -77 divided by 11 is -7. For number 7, two negatives again give you a positive. So -51 divided by a -3 is a +17. Number 8, you've got one of each. You have a +63 divided by a -9. So one of each gives you a negative, and 63 divided by 9 is 7. So -7. Okay, no work needs to be shown on those. You are just putting it in your calculator and just using your brains to make sure you're getting the right kinds of answers. When you have variables, it's the same thing. That's not changing anything. You multiply the coefficients. Remember, coefficients are the numbers in front of the variables. So we're multiplying our coefficients, and you're leaving the variables the same. So 5 times -6. One positive and one negative is going to give you a negative. So -30. Your variables, if they are not the same, which they aren't, just go next to each other in alphabetical order. So -30 ST. You just smush them next to each other. Remember, you can multiply or divide any kinds of numbers. You cannot add and subtract them. Okay, so these are unlike terms, but we're multiplying, so it's not a problem. All right, number 10 has a little bit of both. So you're going to start with the multiplication, just like your order of operations. So 6x times -7y. So 6 times -7 is a -42. Again, you just put the variables next to each other in alphabetical order, so x, y. Over here, you have a positive and a negative. And remember, if you have two signs in a row, we need to rewrite it. So one positive and one negative leaves you with a subtraction. So you're subtracting 57xy. Then you have to decide whether or not these are like terms. Well, the first term has an xy. The second term, that's my squiggly line. The second term also has an xy. Those are the same variables and they have the same exponents, so they are like terms. So now you're going to smush them together. So -42 minus 57 is a -99. And remember, if the variables have to be the same, they stay the same. So it's just -99xy. It's a little bit of everything, okay? All right, moving on. This is just like when we did order of operations. So if you have a giant fraction bar, you have to do everything on the top, then do everything on the bottom, and then you deal with the fraction as a whole. So on the top, I have parentheses, so I have to do those first. Negative 12 plus 8 is negative 4. I still have a negative 3 in front, and now since I don't have parentheses, these two things are being multiplied together. Well, negative 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12, so that's my top number. Now I move to the bottom. On the bottom, I have two signs. I have one addition sign and one subtraction sign, so again, I have to rewrite it with a single sign in between. So I have a 7, and one of each gives us a minus and then 5. So one positive and one negative leaves subtraction. 7 minus 5 is just 2, so my bottom number is 2. Now that I have a single number on the top and a single number on the bottom, I can just use the fraction key to simplify it, or I just know that 12 divided by 2 is 6. And then you're done. All right, these are a little bit different. If you look at that example, 12 minus 6, or 24 minus 6a all over 3. I cannot put the 24 over 6a, or 24 and 6a together. These are not like terms. I can't smush them together and get a single number on the top. So what I have to do is that I can't simplify any further, but that is step 1 if I can. Step 2 is to take every term in the numerator and divide it by the denominator. Okay, so I have a 24 minus 6a that I cannot put together. And all I have on the bottom is a 3. So both the 24 and the minus 6a have to be divided by the 3. Okay? So I always draw it like this, with the loop and then another loop, and then the kids just call it pretzel because it looks like a pretzel. Okay? So you have to pretzel this. You have to divide both the 24 and the 6a by 3, both of them. So 24 divided by 3 is 8. You have a subtraction sign in between. And then 6a divided by 3, you just divide the big number. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and the a stays the same. You cannot put those together, but that is your simplified answer, 8 minus 2a. Okay, so you pretzeled it. You divided both pieces on the top by that single piece on the bottom. The next slide is going to be on your own. However, I'm going to do 14 with you just to practice that pretzel one more time. So you're going to do 13 and 15 on your own before you turn them in. 14 I'm going to do with you. So 21a and minus 42, you cannot put those together because the 21 has an a and the 42 does not. However, they are both being divided by the 7 on the bottom, so you're going to pretzel it. You're going to divide the 21a by 7 and the 42 by 7. So 21a divided by 7, 21 divided by 7 is just 3, and the a stays the same. They had a subtraction sign in between, so you leave that subtraction sign, and then you do 42 divided by 7, which is just 6. And then you're done. Okay? So 2 terms on top that you cannot put together with 1 term on the bottom, that's when you have to pretzel it. Again, do 13 and 15 on your own, and then you're going to turn your notes in and work on 2.2. Bye, guys.